let me give you the lowdown on Pan, which is when I was 15 years old, I read a book called Jitterbug Perfume. And this book articulated Pan was the god of wildness and hedonism and orgiastic abandon and eros, sexual desire, right? He was the embodiment of the natural world. Fucking because you want to fuck, eating because you're hungry, doing it because it feels good, right? This prototypical, like, do what the fuck you want as long as you don't hurt anyone else. And we lost that art. Do it because it feels good. Why not? Right? And so I read this book at 15, and what blew my mind open, there were two things. Number one, I was like, I'm a Maenad. So the Maenads were the high priestesses of Pan, of Dionysus, right? Pan and Dionysus, very, very linked. And they actually presided over the ecstatic rites of Dionysus. And Dionysus was not just the god of wine. So that's what he's known as. And I was always confused by this because I was like, yeah, wine, kind of toxic. Like, how am I so into the god of alcohol when, like, I loved alcohol when I was younger, but I haven't really drank since I was 21. Like, I barely drink. I was like, what? And then I'm reading The Immortality Key, and Brian's writing, he's like, Dionysus was not just the god of wine. He was the god of all plant medicine, including LSD, including magic mushrooms. And I was like, oh my God. Like, because I knew myself as a Maenad. I knew myself as a high priestess. And what's a Maenad? So a high priestess of Dionysus. Okay. So basically they were the high priestesses who gave the original sacraments of Dionysus, of this wild god. And what is amazing in the Greek Empire, which is very patriarchal, women often couldn't leave houses without a male an accomplice guarding over them. Just like the Greek guards on us in the temples, like so wild. And these high priestesses were given a level of freedom that very few other women were in the Greek Empire. And so they gave plant medicine, but what they would do is they would actually take plant medicine and they would run wild in the forests, and they would unify with Dionysus. They would literally become Dionysus, and they would make love to each other. And it was part of the way that they knew God, was this incredible ecstatic eros. And I knew that when I was 15. I was like, I don't know exactly what it means, but I know that I'm a Maenad.
I would like to I don't know if you're going here, but are you going to tell the story about Brian and Summit?
Oh, yes, I can. Okay. Great. So the other thing that I learned in Jitterbug Perfume is that Pan and the cult of Pan was one of the hardest for the Catholic Church to stamp out, because the Catholic Church went to war with these pagan traditions. And Dionysus, right? So Maenads are the high priestesses of Dionysus, who you could argue is Pan, but they're very, very linked as deities. And this was one of the hardest traditions to get rid of for the Catholic Church. Not to mention that there's some argument in the Immortality Key, probably goes a little deeper than everyone needs to know, where Jesus and the rites of Jesus were very similar to the rites of Dionysus. And so there was this deep desire from the Catholic Church to get rid of Dionysian rituals and worship. So they made the devil Pan. There is no devil in the Bible. There's Lucifer. There's the fallen angel. But the devil with hooves and horns, right? Why? Was Pan. We even get the word horny from Pan, right? To be erotically activated.
Half goat, half man.
Yes. That's why the devil looks like a goat. Wow. Not in the Bible. That was the Catholic Church taking the god of high priestess, erotic activation, and primal wild rites and making him literally the devil.
I did not know that until 30 seconds before we walked into Pan's cave. And just thank you for studying this. Thank you for teaching me this, because that one fact, I think, is such a powerful microcosm of what the entirety of the book, the entirety of this pilgrimage is here to do, which is to help people to, with curiosity and love and open-heartedness, start to look at the conditioning that we've all been swimming in, the very things that we've been taught to think are satanic or evil or dangerous or bad for us. What if some of those are actually the way that we plug ourselves directly into the divine?
Yeah. That's why I teach sacred sexual practices, because it's been the most taboo. the most controlled, right? The most restricted of our connection to our own selves. And it is the super highway to divine remembrance. I want people to know that. And the Maenads knew that. The high priestesses knew that. And they held ecstatic rituals and rites for people to tap in to their ecstatic erotic nature as a way to remember the divine, as a way to unify with God consciousness. So plant medicine and sacred sexuality activation, they go hand in hand of being these pillars of empowered sovereign remembrance.
Yeah. And when you got to meet Brian at Summit,
yeah.
Which is like a gathering of entrepreneurs and authors. And when he met you, he said, oh, you're a real life Maynard.
Yeah.
And I felt so happy for you.
They were like, Layla, what would you do to make an LSD sacrament, in the ancient tradition? And I was like, well, I'd have us fast and then take the sacrament and go into deep catharsis and then reclaim our erotic nature and then go into divine remembrance and then feast and celebration. And he was like, you're a real Maynard. It's true. Not that I need a white man to tell me, but it still feels good.
It feels good to be seen.
It sure does.
And especially someone who's dedicated the past decade of his life to researching this.
Yeah.
Also someone who's never done plant medicine, who's not a woman.
Yeah.
Like the fact that he's been in that much service to this is a big deal. And yeah, so I'm glad you got seen.
And also I had zero hope that the heroes of our culture would ever be like, you're a Maynard, with any level of excitement.
Yeah.
Because we got associated with the devil when all we were pillars of remembrance. That ecstasy can be a portal to divine remembrance, that running wild and naked through the forest, that taking plant medicine sacraments can open us to God. And people are probably like, isn't that dangerous? And you're like, yeah. So do it with conscientiousness, do it with care, do it with initiation, do it with excellent guardians, do it with great therapists and coaches and teachers, right? To initiate you into it. But also life is fucking dangerous.
Also,
this whole world is toxic and dangerous. So why are you so afraid of your own divine remembrance?
Yeah, conditioning, dangerous. Not feeling your feelings, dangerous. Eating chemicals in food, dangerous.
Yeah. Driving a car, dangerous.
Yeah.
But somehow we're so afraid of taking our clothes off and being in nature.
But I think people are starting to remember, like, get your grounding, is a thing now. Like, oh, get in nature. Yeah. Andrew Huberman, like, get sunshine in your eyeballs. Like, we're starting to slowly, because science is now verifying and validating what these people have been saying for thousands of years. Yeah. We are starting to move back to the earth, to plant medicine, to our bodies.
Yeah. So when I find out there's a cave of Pan, when the birthplace of Pan, I was like, we gotta go, right? You were like, yo, I'm along for the ride.
I'm in your hands. I trust you.
And so I spent days trying to talk to, the concierge at our hotel. And I was like, look, because I might have hiked it, but you were unwell. We might have hiked it. It's a long, long, long hike. And I was like, it takes a 4-wheel drive. It's a dirt road. It's hard to access. But like, I really need a driver that can get us there, a car that can get us there. So they put us in a Mercedes minivan and they were like, trust me, it can go. So we start going, right? And the driver's like, I don't know about this. And it wasn't like that dangerous. But what was amazing about the energy of it is as he approached the cave, right? And I kept being like, you can do this, man. You can do this. We were like, you're a hero. We're like cheering him on. Is that the word panic comes from Pan, because it's this like, like that energy, right? Like the tip of ecstasy, where you could almost tip over into fear, or you could tip over into ecstasy and aliveness. And so he started feeling like almost a panic fear.
He could stop the van. He's like, I can't go anymore. I can't go anymore. And then I'd be like, you've got this. Just go slow. We're cheering you on. You're a hero. Yeah. And then he would go a little bit further and he would stop again. And you could really feel that panic building in him. And the forest started getting kind of dark and Seussian, and the trees started taking on these weird shapes. And then I noticed, I was like, oh, my clothes are literally falling off. Yeah. And I was lounging because my back was kind of hurting. So next thing I know, I'm like half naked, like bouncing in the car, and our driver's panicking. And I was like, oh, I can feel this Pan energy. I did not know much about Pan, but I can feel what's happening in my body. This is wild.
Yes, it was like tasting, and like, this is like the Eros, right? It was like starting to come over us, and we were like starting to look at each other like on the journey and get like more and more activated. And like, you're sick as fuck. Like, I'm going through boyfriend issues and inner child misery. And it was like, it don't matter anymore.
Yeah, Pan's got us now.
Pan's got us now. So we get out of the car. We finally arrived. The driver's like so happy. He now feels like a hero. We encouraged him. It wasn't that dangerous. It was literally just a dirt road up a mountain. And we hike a little bit up to the entrance of the cave, right? It's sunset. It's super magical. We go in to like the cave to end all caves.
Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a cave. I thought I had seen caves.
Yeah.
I knew CAVE, cave, hole into the earth. I didn't know cave. Yeah. Until I saw this cave. It was like the perfect opening. There was stalactites, stalagmites. It was like the matrix point, like the opening of a pussy that opened up into a womb. Yeah. And then we saw in the center of it, there was a giant circle of stones and a fire pit in the middle where you could just feel the intensity and the wildness of the ceremonies that had happened in this cave. And so many altars that had been built, like simple stone remembrances. Yeah. So we go in, it's dripping. Like you could just hear a little water drip from time to time. We brought 2 yoga mats. We didn't know really what we would need. We wanted to get candles, but we forgot. And then Layla just goes up into the back. Like she just goes all the way deep into the cave. So at some point I just dropped the yoga mats and I dropped the bag and I was like, I'm in. And I follow her up.
Yeah. And so we at first went into this like catharsis of just letting energy move through our bodies. And as you said, it felt like we were kind of shaking off the shadow of the day, the remaining shutdown, also just having to be around other people that weren't on the wavelength.
The guards, the whistles, the driver.
Yeah.
It was just really transmuted that. We just started sounding and shaking. And it happened. We weren't like, oh, let's do a catharsis ceremony. Like it just started happening. Yeah. We started doing it innocently and spontaneously.
I got down on all fours. I was in the dirt.
And just like, slippery mud.
It felt like for me, it's like, oh, I'm home. You know, this is my home.
I asked you as soon as we got, I said, how do you feel? And you said, home, with this sweetness of like a little girl coming to her home for the first time.
And then I asked you if you wanted to sit in Yab Yum. And I think it's important to share that like you and I have connected erotically before. And there was this step of fully making love to each other that actually you had invited me into. And there was some story in me of like, am I blocked? Why haven't we done this all the way? There's this magic between us, this eros between us. And we've simultaneously been best friends, and we made out within probably 36 hours of meeting each other. We've always had this like eros is part and parcel of our deep friendship and a beautiful part of the expression with each other, but we never like fully made love with each other. And I was a little like, oh, am I in avoidance? Am I blocked? Right. And I asked you, I was like, do you want to sit in Yab Yum? And so we got into the position of you sitting on my lap, and we're like, almost in pitch dark. Like we can see each other. We can see each other's eyes, but it's very dark, right? And the sun is going down. We're in the mud. The cave is dripping on us. And like our pussies touch, and we go into this like epic energy activation. Like it was so wild.
And I think it's of note that even though we hadn't fully like consummated our relationship, every time we've ever connected in an erotic way, like if we're at a party and the moment that we really lock into each other's energy, like the whole party catches on fire. Like the whole party lights up. Everyone in the room gets activated. There really is a special alchemy with our transmissions. And when we unify our antenna, like there's a very large amount and very special flavored magic that happens. And so like when that started happening inside of the cave, I was so excited for you, Layla, for me, Emily, for our 3D experience, but also very curious of like, oh, what is about to happen to the planet? Maybe that's really narcissistic, but it felt that big. Yeah. It felt like that sacred of a sight. Yeah. And that big of a reunion.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And why not hold that much bigness for any two women making love? That like Alexander the Great can be like, yes, I changed destiny, right? Like the Fortune 500 CEOs can be like, I changed destiny. Why can two women making love to each other not change destiny?
Yes. I mean, I feel like it did.
Yeah.
In the reclamation that happened there, in us talking about it. I mean, this is the first time I've ever really publicly spoken about making love to women or being bisexual. And so it feels like its own coming out at, 44 years old. Hi, Mom.